Okay, I think she said the stream was starting now. Is that correct? Okay,
And
so
it says we're live. Yep.
thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Am Griffin calling from beautiful Michigan. It's nice out here. I write sci-fi, paranormal, and urban fantasy. Oh, you know what? Okay, I'm sorry. I was having a technical difficulties. Okay, I'm back again. So I am moderating today's panel, which is complex world building. We have Khloe Wren, Jen
Hi.
Brooke, Jen Burke, I'm sorry, Alexa Gregory, and hopefully soon we'll have Desiree Holt. But why don't we just go down the line and let everybody introduce yourselves? We'll start with Khloe.
Okay, hi everybody. So, yep, my name's Khloe Wren. I write paranormal and contemporary romantic suspense. I love my backstories and my world building. Like, I create crazy backstories. Um, I'm in Australia, so yeah, it's midnight here. So if I start talking gibberish, it's because I'm super duper tired. Not sure what else to say. I think that's me.
Okay, we'll jump to Jen. Nice to have you, Khloe.
Hi, I'm Jenn Burke. I write science fiction romance and paranormal romance. I'm calling in from just west of lovely Ottawa, Ontario. And it's nice and sunny here too, which is really nice. I actually sat out on the deck this morning and had coffee. So, I mean, that's the first time I've done that this year. So, yay. I love world building as well. I have lots of thoughts about it, and I'm happy to be part of this panel.
Nice to have you. How about Alexa Gregory?
Hi, I'm Alexa Gregory. I'm just outside of Ottawa, but don't ask me what direction that is because I'm not good with the north, south, and stuff. I write paranormal romance that leans more toward the urban fantasy, and world building is a very important part of my writing process. Khloe mentioned that she needs to have elaborate backstories, and I know everything about my characters and every outlining character. I mean, if I don't know their favorite color or their mother's name, they won't talk to me. So it's important for me to like build this whole thing. It's just part of my process. So I'm happy to be here today.
Okay, let's get in it. I am just so if any authors are out there, I am trying my best to get up the YouTube channel so I can see if any questions are coming through. But until we do have that me set up there, I'm just going to go ahead and start with the questions that I have. So for everybody, the question is, what is the purpose of world building within the larger scale, within the larger goal of writing a book or series? So we can start with, I see Desiree is joining. We'll let her join, but we'll start with whoever wants to start. Hi, Hi, Desiree. I see you. We just finished introducing ourselves. So if you want to, you're on mute right now. If you want to introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Desiree Holt. I write mostly romantic suspense, and I have built several worlds that my series are based on, and I really enjoy doing it.
Oh, nice to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was actually getting to the first question, and I'll just repeat that. So if you could put yourself mute unless you want to be the first one to answer it. The question is, what is the purpose of world building within the larger goal of writing a book or series?
Okay, I discovered over the years that if you create a world first, if you have an idea of what you want, if you create a world first, it gives you all the parameters. You have the characters that you want and how they interact with each other. You have the environment in which they perform what they're doing. It's a way to bring other people in and relate them to existing characters. It's kind of like having a town where you have certain residents in there and they all have certain characteristics, and people that come into the town interact with those with those residents that are there. It's much easier to bring people in and add them when you know what the whole environment is. And I think it gives the reader a better chance to picture, a better chance to picture what's going on if you give them a visual.
I'll jump in next. I think world building, especially for paranormal, it gives you a starting place and a landing pad to take off from. Like until you've got like the world built, you can't act like to have some. I'm trying to explain this. I'm not explaining it well, but I mean, it's just even writing contemporary. You're still not going to write in the current world exactly as it is. Well, it's pretty rare that you write in the real world exactly as it is. You're going to change some things. Like my Sharon MC series, it's set in Texas, but I made up the town. So I've got made up buildings and shops and whatever. And you need to have those written down, because otherwise when someone goes from the cafe and they pop next door to the gym one day, they can't then pop next door to the pub the next day. Like, you've got to keep everything straight. So like in your head, you can visualize it like you're walking down your local main street. Like it's to keep things consistent and to give you that solid ground and where to go. And it's a lot harder to get stuck writing if you know where to go. It's really easy to, like, little things will trip me up when I'm writing. Like the example is like, okay, they walked out the cafe and they went up the street. Crap, what are they going to see? Where are they going to end up? If I don't have that written in my notes, that can take me hours to get back to writing what I was writing before, just to have my guy walk down the street. So I think like world building is vital, and to get that done before you start is super vital, just for consistency, especially with long series.
Okay, thank you, Jenn.
I think that's one of the most important thing about world building, especially in a sci-fi or a fantasy or even a paranormal environment, is it gives depth to the world. So like if you have history set up for that fantasy world, then you can refer to that as you're writing. So it gives some depth to the idea that this world actually exists. It's not just kind of plopped down on the page and starts from this point forward. There was a whole history of events that happened, and it gives the reader, kind of adds to that idea that this is a real world, obviously, even if it's totally made up. The other thing I think world building does, is why it's super important, is to figure out the rules, especially for, like I said, sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal. You need to have the rules set up so you know what your characters can do. So you know also when you can break them in a way that makes sense, that's consistent with the rest of the world building. If you don't have rules set up, then everything just seems way too easy or way too flexible, and that's no good for telling a story with conflict. So those are the two things that I really look for when I'm world building, in addition to locations of things and everything else that everybody said. But the history and the rules, I think, are really important.
Alexa.
All right. So, I think Jenn is still talking. Oh.
Nope, she's on mute.
So, it's because my thing is, okay. So
yeah,
what everyone said was all already, the answer has been pretty much answered, but I'll just put in my 2 cents. I have a series Bible where I put everything from my world in there by book, by series, so I can always refer back to it. And it's a lifesaver. I'm only starting my 2nd series within the same universe, which I've called Nocturna, because so they're all nocturnal creatures. But I built up the history of the world for multiple reasons, for my own process as a writer, but also if I feel like the world or the universe I've created is rich and there's a history, if I know that history, it'll translate onto the page and it will submerge the reader in this other world. I mean, reading is an escape. And I feel that if the world is very solid, and like Jenn Burke mentioned, if the rules are clear, it's easier for the reader to know what to expect, but also they don't know what to expect because it's a new world, right? But if the rules do reapply in another conflict, you want that consistency. There's also the fact that a history in a universe will also very much impact how characters behave. For example, in my newest series, it happens in hell. Now, my version of hell is not the Christian version of hell, and hell has been a setting in multiple series and novels throughout multiple genres. So my hell is my own, and the rules that I have are important, and the history attached to it also very much dictates how the characters are going to relate to each other. There's a hierarchy in hell, and that must be clear to the reader, but it also must be clear to me as the writer, so I remain consistent. And wounds come with history. And I feel like if those wounds that can be transgenerational are clear within a world, then that experience, as I said, for readers is much richer. So that's my spiel on world building.
Thank you all. We have a question from an author, and I'm sorry if I butcher her name, but it's Ayana Lee Williams, and she's asking, have you ever had to put in a coffee shop into your world and had a hard time coming up with the name? So I think that can apply not just to coffee shops, but if you've ever had a business in your fake fictional world, how are you going about naming those? Alexa, since you started, you wanna go ahead?
Sure.
If you've had.
Yeah, well, my one of my series happens in New Orleans. So it starts in New Orleans and it ends up in hell, but the businesses are hidden from the mortals because demons and witches are kind of running New Orleans. And I have a restaurant called Hecate or Hecate's Cauldron, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And I have, there's a nightclub in New Orleans where there's music, and I changed the name to Spotted Newt instead of Spotted Cat. So you can inspire yourself with already in the world and change it to your own purposes. But I find that when I name a thing in a book, I'm very much aware of what is the purpose of that business and where does it fit into the story. So Hecate's Cauldron is called that because it's the witches and warlocks of New Orleans' favorite restaurant, and Hecate is a goddess. So of course it would make sense that they would call the restaurant that. So that's also have a tattoo parlor in the world, and I think I called it something like Spelled Ink, or it all relates back to what the purpose of the coffee shop or the business is, because it is a setting, and hopefully you can pop it into multiple books. Readers love that, right? And it again enriches the experience.
Thank you. Has anybody else had to name something in their world?
Yeah, like, I mean, the more you write, the harder it is to name stuff. I think with my very first book series that I wrote, I named stuff after actual places that were there. That's set in Rosebery in Tasmania, and there's a pub in that town called Top Pub, and it happened to be for sale at the time that I was writing, so there was like a bajillion photos online for this place, so I could very accurately set that and call it Top Pub. My Sharon MC series, which is in a made-up town, has clearly got all the made-up businesses in it. I do have a cafe in there, and that's called Marie's Cafe because I kept that name simple because it's a very old school homey type of cafe. So I didn't want to give it some fancy name. The rest of the names are all to do with Greek mythology because that's where the Sharon name came from. Naming an MC is really hard because you don't want to tread on any real MC's toes. Like you can't go bringing that kind of level of trouble down on your head. So you got to really check out there what's already out there to pick something fictional that no one else is using. And ended up going with the Sharons, which is sorry.
Oh no, I was saying thank you. I thought you were done.
Yeah.
I'm having a feedback issue.
yeah, so like I picked the Sharons because they're the ferrymen, the Greek ferrymen. They decide whether the souls go to the Elysian Fields or Hades. So that's kind of what my club do. They're vigilante justice, and when people don't, when the legal system doesn't take care of them, they come in and take care of them. So, I've named I think the gym was called Acheron and the bar is called Stikes, or Sticks, however you like to say it. So that's kind of how I went. I try to pick a theme. My tattoo parlor is called Silky Ink because the lady that owns it, her road name is Silk, so it's Silky Ink. In a way, the names get more simplistic the more you write because you kind of tapped out coming out with the fancy stuff.
Jenn, I saw that you were about to pop in.
So I set my paranormals are in my Not Dead Yet series is set in Toronto. My Dragon CEO's assistant is set in Ottawa, where I live. So what I try to do is come up with names that don't exist. I want to be able to have the creative control over what I'm going to do. So what I try to do is figure out, okay, could this business exist in this place that I want it to exist in? And then I come up with a name for it. So in Dragon CEO's Assistant, let me hold that up. I have the software company that the CEO, the Dragon CEO owns, is named Tunina Software. And I believe I got that by looking up the word for dragon in Arabic, because that's the background of the Dragon CEO. And then in Give Up the Ghost, which is the second book in the Not Dead Yet series, I actually do have a coffee shop. This is like the only book I have a coffee shop in, and it literally it appears in the first chapter. And there is the inciting event happens in that location, and the name of it is the Candra Cafe. And how I came up with that is I was thinking like moon and whatnot, and then I decided that the proprietor was going to be Indian, and then I looked up the name for moon in Indian, and I came up with the Candra Cafe. So, or Hindu, I believe. I can't remember what language it was, but anyway, so that's how I come up with names. Is I try to tie it to the background. What would this person who runs this place name their company or name their business? With the investigation in the Not Dead Yet series, in book 2, they open up their own private investigation service, and they call it Caballero Investigations. Which means basically knight. And the whole idea behind that was one of the fellows who started it up is Spanish. That's his background. So Caballero, Spanish. And it was also tied into the fact that he really wants to be a protector of people, or he is a protector of people. So anyway, that's where that name came from as well. So I try to tie it to the person who's actually creating it. So thinking and getting into their head and thinking, okay, so if they're going to name a business, what are they going to name it? And tie in my own thoughts in that as well.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So this question was more for me. I was just trying to think of world building questions. So I heard a few of you that say that you actually have the world first and you build it. So you build everything, the terrain, the businesses, how it's set up, the hierarchy, rules, and whatnot. For me, I actually have the characters first, then I build the world around the characters. So does anybody do that here where they're just write a story, then they have a character, and then they're like, okay, I'll just build? Or is it like a hybrid?
Yeah, I did that with the Phoenix Agency, which wasn't supposed to be a story to begin with. But the original 4 characters were former military. And so in the beginning of each book is a paragraph that explains about him. And it's like the phoenix who burned and then rose from the ashes to go back and do what his assignments were. These are men who are all in special forces. They left the military and now they continue to fight for people as civilians. And they do all the things that nobody else wants to do. Kidnap rescues, Mexican cartels, all of those things. But then once I had that, and once I found out it was going to be more than one book, I had to go in and create the whole world. Where do they live? How do they do things? They have to be different than everybody else. What are the things that they like to do? So before I wrote the second book, I sat down and I wrote a 10-page Bible, which actually took me as long as writing a book, I think, to get everything the way I wanted it and to get specific characters in there. In my Naked Cowboy series, I created the world first because all the books take place in a little town in Texas called Saddle Wells, which is very much like the town I lived in Texas for 15 years. And all of the businesses that I talk about in there are based on businesses that actually exist in that town, although I changed the names on it, but I kind of related it to it. So everything that came after I created that world evolved from either a situation or an establishment in that town. But by the time I sat down and wrote the series, I had everything set in my mind, and I knew exactly where everybody was going and what they were doing and how they were doing it. And my stories came from that. Does that make sense?
It does. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I've done the building, having the characters first and then building the world with the Not Dead Yet series. I had the concept of I wanted to have a character who was not like any other character I'd seen in a paranormal series. So the main character brought back to life by a witch, and she was intending to bring him back to be like his normal human self, and she messed up, and so he's now immortal and he